Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited to see you. Today, we're doing the awkwardly named Put Words in My Mouth, Setting Clear Expectations as a Manager. And Put Words in My Mouth is a little thing we do at WIMD where we give you, simple scripts for complex situations. And that's what we're up to today. So for those of you who don't already know me, I am Holly Burton. I'm a leadership coach for women in male-dominated industries and WIMD's founder.
And I'm Darrell, and I'm a career and parenting coach. And before becoming coaches, both Holly and I spent years of our careers working in the very male-dominated industry, mining industry. Holly is a mining engineer and myself as a geologist.
Right. And, now Darrell and I both work as coaches, obviously, and we spend all day nerding out over leadership issues just like this. In fact, this talk is born out of many, many rants of Darrell Farrow at me about this exact issue. So we're really excited to share, what we see all the time with our clients. And, I think that's an important thing to talk about, which is like why we're doing this today, right? And, in all the coaching that Darrell and I do across all different levels, I would say probably 30% of the problems that we see with leaders boil down to problems with setting expectations with their team, where they're just not quite nailing this technique correctly, and that leaks into the whole relationship and kind of poisons it. So we see this all over the place, all the way from brand new managers who just started doing this like 2 weeks ago, all the way up to CEOs who've been doing this for eons and just kind of never really learned how to do it right and have carried their bad habits forward. So hopefully this will be useful and relatable to you as it is to most of our clients at some point or another.
Great. And so here are some clues that we see talking to our clients that might mean you're struggling with setting expectations. Your employees are missing deadlines, they're producing poor quality work, and you're feeling like your employees aren't even listening to you or respecting you.
And if you ever sat there feeling really powerless to get your team to do work, or if you've ended up micromanaging the crap out of them just to get the thing that you want done, or, the most common thing, hands up if you feel this, or let me know in the chat, like if you end up going, oh my God, why can't they do this work? It's just not that complicated. And maybe you end up just doing the work yourself because it's kind of easier than convincing them to do it. We've all been in that toxic spiral before. All of those things are signs as well that you're struggling to set expectations correctly, usually.
Lots of team dysfunction and toxic behavior happens because managers don't learn how to set expectations clearly. And none of us are actually trying to create the situation. But because we don't know how to set clear expectations, and because we're trying so hard to create good supportive environments for our teams, we actually end up messing it up.
Great intentions, bad results. So let's go through, Darrell and I are going to do like a bit of a role play here where we do a typical example of how most of us do this, so that y'all can hopefully maybe see a little bit of yourself in, in this example. So I'm going to be the manager in this situation. Darrell and I both worked in the mining industry, so I'll be the tech services manager. Darrell's going to be a senior geologist, and I'm going to delegate a little bit of work to her. So, hey, Darrell, just hoping you could do a block model for me this week. When do you think you might be able to get that done?
Yeah, Holly, I guess I could try and work on that. Yeah, maybe on Thursday or Friday.
Okay, yeah, cool. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so, short and sweet. Really simple, probably relatable to some of you in the room. Let us know in the chat or hands up if you've been there before or seen that before from either end. But here's where I'm at as a manager leaving this conversation. It was an easy conversation with Darrell. She mentioned she's going to work on this on Thursday or Friday. It's probably 4 or 5 hours of work. So I feel like, yeah, she'll probably get it done if she's got one of those 2 days to do it in. I think it's going to get done. And, I did notice some hesitation a little bit when I gave it to Darrell, and I've been noticing she seems a bit stressed out these days when I delegate work to her. I feel like maybe her plate's a little bit overloaded, which is why I kind of went, well, when could you fit this in? I'm trying to put a little less pressure on her. And, she took on the work. So I think it's gone okay.
Great. And so here's where I'm at leaving this conversation. I have absolutely no intention of doing this work. As far as I'm concerned, it's a complete waste of time when I'm only going to have to redo the block model in a few weeks' time when we finished all the drilling. And besides which, there's actually a technical obstacle standing in the way, which Holly doesn't even seem to realize, of me doing the work by Friday anyway, right? And I've actually got more important things that I'm working on right now that I'm actually going to concentrate on. So I'm going to not do this work, and I'm going to actually just hope that Holly forgets to ask me on Friday. And you'll notice I've been really, really clever here, because I never committed to working on this. I said I'd try and work on it on Thursday or Friday, and I certainly didn't commit to a deadline when I'd have this work done by. So let's just hope that she doesn't ask me on Friday. And also, lately I'm feeling really stressed with Holly constantly coming to me with these ridiculous requests. I mean, what the hell does she think I'm spending my time on doing anyway? She keeps coming up. It's like she thinks she's got to make work for me all the time. It's really stressing me out.
Cool. Well, I'm loving this inside look at how my employee feels about my excellent work. I'm just trying to be nice to Darrell, and it turns out it's going terribly for me. And for anybody, Darrell and I have known each other for years, so we're play acting. But this is how it goes, right? This is how it goes with managers and employees. Darrell doesn't think I'm that great, and I'm not sure I think Darrell's that great right now either. But let's see how it goes on Friday when I come back and ask her about it. So, hey, Darrell, how'd it go with the block model?
Holly remembered to ask me about it. Holly, actually, I'm hell of a sorry, but I just couldn't work on that at all because, the Pit Super had a whole lot of requests. They were really urgent, things they needed me to attend to. So I was really busy with that all week. So sorry, didn't get around to it.
Darrell, what? I mean, all that stuff coming out of the pit, like Tom could have done that. He's just been fussing around doing nothing all week, like working on a bunch of stuff we're not going to use for the next 5 years. Like, okay, I guess we'll just have to work on this on Monday then.
Yeah, okay. Phew, I got away with it again. But I don't actually know what she's so darn upset about. I mean, really, this work is still a huge waste of time. And I don't even know why she cares if it gets done. I mean, really?
Cool. So, behind the scenes here, we can all see, it's crystal clear to me now as manager, Darrell's just lying through her teeth, right? I'm going to show up and ask her about this on Monday, and, Darrell's not going to get it done. Obviously not. She's stringing me along as best she can because she doesn't want to do this work. She thinks it's stupid. So, yeah, she's got some blocks about doing the work, some of them valid and technical, none of those that I know about. And, sometimes we just end up in these situations with terrible, slimy employees like Darrell, who are just really, really difficult to manage, right?
Yeah, and sometimes us employees, we end up with these ridiculous managers who don't understand the very good technical reasons why their requests are stupid and just, ridiculous. I mean, really? So we're in a standoff.
Right. And Darrell and I are in a stand-up, like as much as I would like to make this Darrell's fault and, blame it all on her, actually what's going on here is that it's all on me. I'm not being a very good manager. I'm not setting very clear expectations. And that is why we are in this mess. Good job, Holly. We love to see it. Way to embarrass yourself on the internet in front of a bunch of folks at a Wimby event. So let's have a look at what good looks like. We've got a little PowerPoint that'll help us kind of walk you through how to do this a hell of a lot better than I just did. So Darrell, walk us through the script for doing this better than me.
And this is how it goes, basically. This is what I want done, and this is when I want it done by. This is why it needs to be done. Do you foresee any problems with that? And my door is open if you have any questions. And if anything changes, which might impact your meeting the deadline, you need to give me a heads up as soon as possible so that we can troubleshoot and make sure you meet that deadline. So keep me posted.
All right. So that's the script in a nutshell. Let's break that down into its pieces because there's 6 key parts that we need to make sure we understand. So the formula for this is step 1, what specifically do you want done by this person? When do you need it done by? Why you need it done? Then you need to check in with them if there's any barriers in the way and get a clear commitment that they'll actually do the work. You need to invite them to ask you any questions, then tell them to keep you posted. 6 easy steps. If there's anybody here, by the way, who's wanting screenshots, now's your moment. Take a screenshot of this. This is going to be the key thing for you to remember.
All right. So let's break it down in more detail and we'll see where Holly stuffed it all up.
Yay for me. All right. So step number 1 is what you want done. So here you need to explain exactly what you need to have done. So you need to be clear, you need to be specific, you need to state the success criteria up front. And the level of detail that you're going to go into is going to be dependent on their seniority. So if you're dealing with somebody who's really junior, you're going to give them really tightly defined products, crystal clear success criteria, probably lots of check-ins built in. And if you're dealing with somebody far more senior, you can probably give them more outcome focused success criteria, as opposed to the specifics of exactly what you want done. You can say, we want you to achieve this. How you get there is less important, but this is what we're looking for. Somebody more senior is going to be able to run with that as they move up the chain.
Great. So in our role play, Holly said, hey, just hoping you can get that block model done this week. This was not at all specific about the work she wanted done on the block model. I mean, what commodities, what drill holes, etc. So it's totally possible that if I had done this work, I wouldn't do it the way she expected anyways, which would have been even more of a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so step number 2 is when you want it done. So this one's pretty straightforward. You have to give them a deadline and there's got to be a clear date attached. And the key part here that I messed up is that you have to actually set the deadline yourself, right?
Yeah. So in our role play, Holly said, when do you think you could get it done? Holly didn't set a deadline at all. She asked me to do it. This is a huge problem because this is just Holly delegating her responsibility as the manager to an employee.
And this is a pretty cozy position for me to be in as a manager. I mean, hands up or note, tell us in the chat if this is something that you tend to do. You know, we often do it as a way to give people flexibility, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a way of offloading responsibility, right? Suddenly now, if Darrell doesn't meet the deadlines, like, it's not my fault. I didn't set the deadline. I don't have to be the bad guy because Darrell kind of went in and said it herself. But this is kind of like, you know, if you're a little kid, like or if you're a parent, letting your little kids eat candy every single day of the week, all the time. Like, it's your job to make sure that their teeth don't rot, right? From eating candy and never brushing their teeth. As a manager, that's still your job as well. So you need to be careful about outsourcing this and offloading this. It's actually on you to make sure that the deadlines are set and follow through.
Right. So both of these things together, the what and the when, make up the expectation. And it's really important that you get the strength and tone of the expectation right. You don't want to be wishy-washy. So you don't want any ums and ers and justs and can you possibly.
Yeah, you need to watch out, especially for using we. Oh, we just need you to get this block bottle done this week, right? Or indirect language, like, oh, it needs to be done by, like, it needs to be done. The block model independently in itself needs that to be done. No, like, I need it to be done. Holly, the manager, right? So all these little ways of distancing yourself from the accountability, right? And so if you're struggling to do this here, I promise you're going to struggle to do it later on when you actually have to hold this person to account. So it's important to get this right here as well.
Yeah. At the end of the day, don't be casual about your expectations. If you set casual expectations, you're going to get casual adherence to it. And that's exactly happened with me and exactly what happened with me in the role play.
Okay, so step number 3 is why it needs to be done. So here you want to explain why this project is important, what it's meant to achieve, and then any consequences to it not getting done. I don't think this is something that I did particularly well in this situation.
Yeah, and this step is important because you actually get buy-in from your employees when they understand what's important about the work that you're asking them to do. And it also empowers them to prioritize and make decisions about the work dynamically, especially when you're not around. So in our role play, Holly didn't even give me any explanation for why she wanted this work done. So in my view, this work was stupid and pointless, and I prioritized other things that I saw as being more important.
Right. And something we haven't talked about up until this point is this is actually a huge tragedy because I actually do have a good reason for getting this work done. We'll talk about it a little bit more later, but there are going to be some consequences that fall down in me and Darrell's head for this not getting done on time. And I didn't let her know. I just set her out to sea. And since she didn't have that context, she deprioritized it because it wasn't interesting to her and she didn't see the point of it. And it honestly wasn't that fun.
And if there are consequences to not getting the work done to a certain standard or deadline, this is where you would explain them, because it's fair to your employees to let them know upfront about the consequences. You don't want to surprise them with a terrible outcome for something that they thought was just simply minor. Okay, so step number 4 is checking in and getting commitment. So this is where you check in with them to make sure that they're actually able to meet the expectation that you outlined and to make sure that there's nothing standing in the way of them actually getting that done or being successful at actually completing the work. So a key part is getting commitment from them so that they can't weasel out of it later with excuses. So the way you might do this is you would say to them, do you foresee anything standing in the way of you meeting this expectation and deadline? Or is there anything you need from me or anybody else to help you meet that deadline? And then you want to confirm with, can you do that? And get a clear yes from them.
Right. And it's really important to get a clear yes or no when you're confirming their level of commitment to this. And you need to watch out for anything that's less than 100% yes. So that might be like, Darrell, maybe, I'll try, I guess, or even a yes that's kind of like, yeah, I think I could do that, right? So even a literal yes with the tone of a maybe is something to watch out for because those are all ways that employees will create distance between actually committing to doing a thing and doing a thing. And B, it's another way for them to kind of hint at you that there's something in the way. And as a manager who's invested in getting this work done, you want to find out what that thing is. So you got to pick up on that.
If you don't check in and actually get commitment, you're actually opening the door to all kinds of shitty behavior. And that's exactly what happened in our example. My Weasley words were a way of not committing and leaving space for me not to do the work and then play innocent when Holly asked me for the work on Friday. And because Holly didn't push back and ask any further questions, I got away with it.
So step number 5 is an invitation for questions. Now, this is something that most of us do kind of, de rigueur all the time, kind of almost by instinct. We go, let me know if you have any questions. My door is always open. Classic manager nonsense, right? We're always doing this. But there's a slight tweak we want to make to this. And that's that rather than inviting somebody to ask questions, we want you to make asking questions a requirement of the people, right? It's not something that's like, oh, if it's nice, if it's convenient, if it's easy for you, feel free to ask me some questions. Like, no, I actively want you to ask me some questions to make sure that if there's anything in the way, we can get them out of the way. So I'm actually going to cross this off and turn this into requests for questions because it's so important that we get that right. So a way that you can try this is, my door's always open if you have any problems or questions, and please do ask, especially if it's going to impact the deadline. I'd much rather you ask me questions than that you spend all this valuable time struggling to figure it out. If you've got a question I can answer, let's just get it sorted so you can get going. Don't worry about wasting my time.
Making it a requirement to ask questions also removes the stigma for asking, and it frees your employees up not to feel like an idiot when they ask questions.
Right. And so, did I do this to Darrell in our role play? Like, no, absolutely not. Just skip right over this. Good job, Holly. Again, an A+ on the role play.
Right. And step number 6 is telling your employee to keep you posted on how it's going and on anything that could affect the deadline. So basically, this helps you avoid the trap of your employees offering endless excuses for not taking accountability when they don't meet the deadline. And it also empowers them to take ownership of the work and come to you if there are any problems. So basically, here's how you might do this. You simply say, if anything comes up that might affect the deadline, let me know so that we can troubleshoot it and make sure we make the deadline. Keep me updated. And if you're delegating a longer or more sensitive project, you might actually want to put a structured system in place for them checking in with you. So I want you to report back to me in this manner at this interval. This stops you from seeming like a micromanager because you won't be harassing them all the time to get updates, but you will get the information that you need to do your job responsibly.
So it's really important here that you avoid the information vacuum that so many of us end up falling into. So, some ways that most people fall into that are not requiring them to ask questions, just inviting them instead, not requiring them to check in, right? Make sure you have a plan in place, or you've at least said to them, hey, check in with me about how this is going. Creating some kind of framework for monitoring progress is really important here as well if you want to get out of the information vacuum. And then also, by the way, friends, none of this actually absolves you from checking in yourself, right? So you need to set up the structure, but also if your employee is not doing it, you've got to proactively follow up with them, check in yourself, and then reinforce that it's up to them to check in. That's still an important part of this, right? So really important that you make sure that you're still getting the information that you need as a manager. That's far more important than not checking so that your employees are comfortable.
Right. So did Holly do this in our example? No, she didn't do it at all. And by not creating an expectation that I come to it with any problems I have, Holly reinforced my ability to misunderstand, miss the deadline, and tell her about the problems afterwards, which is exactly what I did when it was far too late to actually fix them. And this was exactly what I was counting on because I thought this was a stupid ask anyway, and I didn't want to do the work. So she gave me all the agency that I needed to get away with it.
I played right into Darrell's hands and she played me like a fiddle. Good job, Holly. So let's go through the formula, the 6 steps that you need to make sure you get this right. So step 1, what you want done, very specific, crystal clear what you're looking for so the person can actually go do the work correctly, right? 2, when you want it done by with a deadline that you've actually set yourself, not outsourced to your employee. Why it needs to be done so they've got enough context to understand how to prioritize this work and what really matters about it. Then you want to check in about any barriers that are in the way and get a firm commitment for them to actually do the work. And then you want to not invite them, but require them to ask you questions if they run into any problems along the way. And then make sure that there's a plan in place for them to keep you posted so that you know what's going on with the project you just delegated. So yeah, 6 steps that I basically did not achieve. Loved it. Really fun. So let's see what this would look like if I had actually done it right. If I had, attended this wonderful webinar that we're doing and sorted myself out, how would this go for me and Darrell? Okay, so Darrell, I need you to give me an updated model this week with gold, silver, using all the new drilling by Friday. Anything in the way of you doing that?
Holly, I'd love to be able to do that for you. However, we still have another 2 drill holes to complete. And then once I have all the drilling data, I need to update the geological model. before I can even start working on the block model.
Okay, is there any way that we could just use the 4 holes that we've already drilled?
Yeah, I can. However, I still need to update the geological model, and that takes a lot of time. So I couldn't possibly get it done by Friday.
Okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That would take a long time. Well, I'm just curious. So the 4 holes that we've already drilled so far, how different are they from what we've seen otherwise in the area? Like, does this change our understanding of what the deposit looks like, or do they kind of confirm what we've already modeled?
No, actually, they've actually confirmed our model. So we could actually just use the old geological model and rerun the geostats on the block model and the new grade.
Yeah, you know what, Darrell, I like that plan. That works for me because, we've got a shareholders meeting next week and the mine manager is really on me to make sure that we've got some updated modeling to show them based on the drilling we have so far. So if we don't get this, it's going to be curtains for you and I. So yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. Do you think you can get that done by Friday?
Yeah, it'll be a stretch, but I'm happy to work on it. And I'm quite happy to work around the clock and get it done by then.
Okay, great. So you'll have it done by the end of the day on Friday?
Right.
Okay. Anything else in the way of you getting that work done?
Nope.
Okay. Anything you need from me or anybody else to help you meet the deadline?
Yeah, actually there is. That consultant is pestering me to compile the geotech data for him by Monday. Is there somebody else who could take that over from me?
Yeah, definitely. We could give that work to Tanya. That's no problem. Anything else you need?
Nope.
Okay. Great. Well, Darrell, my door's always open. Please come ask me if you've got any questions. Like I said, this project's really got to get done by Friday. So if absolutely anything gets in your way or you're not sure, please come and talk to me. I want to make sure that you're, that I help you troubleshoot this and keep it moving. So keep me updated on how it goes and we'll talk again on Friday.
Great.
All done.
Okay. So here's where I'm at leaving this conversation. I really don't want to have to do the extra work when I'm going to have to do it all over again in a couple of weeks when we wrap up our drilling for the season. But I can see there's actually a really good reason to do this. I mean, there's a shareholders meeting and this has to be done for that shareholders meeting. And so it's really important for the company, okay? And so I'm going to put in the work and make sure that Holly gets this by Friday. Most importantly, Holly has been fair here. She's treated me like a responsible human being and given me the reasons for why we need to do it. And we've discussed the problems and come up with solutions already. So quite frankly, I've got a lot more respect for her because she's holding both of us to account.
And, my prediction here, we'll see how it actually goes. But, on Friday, when I go talk to Darrell about it, I'm pretty sure this work's going to get done, and if it's not done, the good news is I've created everything I need to really be able to hold Darrell to account, like to have a strong container to reinforce this, right? She's committed to doing the work. There's a clear deadline. She knows exactly what she's got to do and by when. I've given her the opportunity up front to identify any issues and told her to come with me with anything that shows up between now and then. And I've put it on her to come back to me if any problems show up. So at the end of the day, this is now all on Darrell. I've ticked all the boxes that I need to tick. And if she can't get it done, then I've got the tools to come back and say, hey, what happened? What went wrong? We talked about this, right? And, in the long term, if this does become a longer term behavioral problem with Darrell, and now I've got to get HR involved, the good news is I'm already doing all the behaviors that HR would want to see me do to make sure that I'm giving Darrell her best chance of success, or, unfortunately, to give me my best chance of success at, kicking Darrell out the organization if she just can't manage to perform.
And the reality is I'm actually a really responsible employee and I take my job seriously and I like to do a really good job. So yeah, Holly's not going to have a problem with me in the long term.
So how's everybody feeling about this lovely script that we defined?
We've basically outlined a pretty direct, no-nonsense method of setting expectations for your team. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you feel that this is a bit overkill or even a bit harsh. So who in this room thinks that this is a bit militant or that they would never be able to be this direct with their team?
Hands up, anybody in real life or in the chat. So I feel like this sometimes. Like I'm here teaching you all how to do this. I don't always get this right. There are times when I'm very much the first manager that we described, right? Like that's maybe close to home sometimes for me. I'm the only one. Okay, that's great. I like that, Darrell.
Yeah.
Oh, Brenda says yes.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense, Holly, because basically everyone wants as a manager to be liked and to be seen to be considerate and fair, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens in that scenario is that just like I did, you tend to soften up what feels like the harsh edges on the script, the parts that feel a little bit direct, the parts that feel a little bit like I'm really going to hold you to this, right? And we're trying to do that to be nice to our employees, but the problem is we're not actually really helping them. As you could see in the first example, like I gave Darrell just enough rope to hang herself with and then was mad at her with the results.
So it's a lot less about being nice and rather about treating the people who report to us with respect, okay? They are competent people who are employed to do a job. And they're also capable of doing the job. I mean, we wouldn't have employed them if they weren't capable of doing the job. And when we overfunction and we try to accommodate them in every way or problem solve for them before we even know whether or not they have a problem, we're actually treating them like children who can't be responsible on their own. And that's actually not respecting them. And even worse, it's actually very disempowering for them. And it doesn't even make them like you. I mean, in the first example, when I pulled back the curtain and let you all in on what I was thinking, did it sound like I like Holly or even respected her? I mean, hell no. Okay. And let's be honest here. I mean, Holly's actually a really nice person. I like Holly as a person. I can have no problem liking Holly as a person, but as a manager, hell no, I really didn't like her. Okay. But when she sorted herself out in the second example, I liked her way more and I had way more respect for her because she was firm and she treated me with respect, right?
And ultimately, at the end of the day, your job as a manager is to set a strong container for your team, like to give them boundaries so that they can play safely within them, but they know where the edges are so they don't go aside of them. That if you can do that well, you create employees who are way more independent, who can function without checking in with you every minute. And if you get that wrong, like I did in the first example, then you end up having to resort to micromanagement, self even worse, right? And you have to get involved in every little thing because they actually don't have the tools to do the work effectively and do it on their own. And they kind of go from, as Darrell was describing, not those like competent adults that you hire, they become like children, right? And so you either end up with these like overly rebellious teenagers on one hand that are fighting with you about every little thing. That's the Darrell Farrows of the crowd, right? Or you end up, what somebody was just talking about in the chat a second ago, with little toddlers who just don't know what the hell's expected of them. And so they'll ask you questions about every little thing that's going on, right? And so both of those are symptoms that you're actually not setting a strong enough container. And your team just doesn't know what the hell to do with you. So it's really important that you get this right.
And ironically, in the worst case scenario, when you're trying to be too nice to your employees because you want to be empathetic and fair and you want them to like you, you can actually end up hurting them. I mean, if you're too soft and you end up with employees who aren't performing properly, you might actually have to fire them. So they're getting fired when the problem is actually you not managing them properly. This really isn't a fair situation. So you started out trying to be helpful and accommodating and ended up by making everything terrible with your ruinous empathy, right? And your team ends up paying the price. So this is why being firm really, really matters.
The mass manager and I are going to do a little role play. I'm going to be the employee. Mass manager obviously is going to be the manager. Darrell's going to listen in and kind of give critiques and helpful suggestions about how this could improve. And y'all can listen in as well with Darrell, and we'll get you to share those things in the chat. But the mass manager is going to be there with their anonymous mask and hat on to try to preserve some of their anonymity. And we're going to make a deal with all of you. Since this person up here is being brave and coming up and trying this thing for us, part of the job of the mass manager in this is, to get it right and try to do the thing that we've taught them, but also like to screw it up a little. So Darrell and I have something to critique, right? It's a canned webinar, friends. And so we're going to make an agreement in this room that if the mass manager makes a mistake, it's probably because they're actually excellent at this and they've just made it on purpose so that me and Darrell have something to talk about. Yeah. Okay. So me and the mass manager are going to do this. Darrell's going to listen in. So mass manager, tell me a little about the scenario that we're going to role play here. Who am I being as your employee? What's going on?
Sounds good, Holly. I am a somewhat new manager to the team, and you are actually somebody that I've inherited when I actually joined this team. I would say that you're quite experienced and senior in your role, and you've actually repeatedly told me that this is going to be your last job before retirement. And you're amazing at your job, and you love working on meaty problems, and you love doing anything that brings tons of customer value and makes our product inherently better. And you're amazing when you find that really good fit for that problem that you find really intriguing or engaging. But I've really struggled to get you to take on tasks that you view as less important or not as interesting to work on. So I think that's the scenario that I sort of want to set up here.
Perfect. Okay. And just so you know, and just so everybody else knows, I'm going to try to be a little bit difficult of an employee here for the mass manager. I don't know this person that the mass manager is talking about, if they're real, if they're fake, got no inside knowledge, but I'm going to try to be just a little bit complicated for this person to manage so that they've got to stretch and work their skills. Okay. So mass manager, delegate to me. Tell me what you need me to do.
All right. Well, hey, Holly, I know you are super busy launching a big feature right now. But the security team actually just contacted me, and they've actually flagged this really, really big issue that we need to address ASAP. We're basically in breach of GDPR and a bunch of other privacy and compliance legislations. In a nutshell, right now, all of our employees can actually access data from all customers in our internal administrative console. And it's a huge problem. We need to fix it. We need to address it. It actually puts our customers' data at risk. And it actually puts us at a huge legal liability as well. It puts us at a huge legal risk, and we might actually fail our upcoming security audit if we don't address this. Can I get you to look into this and work through this next, maybe once you are done with this feature launch that you're currently working through?
Yeah, I could probably work on this once I'm done the feature launch, although that's going to take me a really long time. This maybe sounds like a project you should give somebody else if it's this urgent.
I mean, I think we've got a little bit of time to address this. I think the security audit is going to happen in like 2-3 months' time. I'll have to check with the security team to really figure that out. But I think you're the right person for the job. This area of the product does fall into your domain and your responsibility. So yeah, just hoping I can count on you to take this one on. Okay,
so we've got 2 or 3 months here. What's the work you need me to do? Like, because I'm still going to be at least another month and a half on the project I have now.
Yeah, I mean, like, I know it's tough right now with the feature launch happening, but as you and the team work through the feature launch, once we get through QA, once we actually, go on to releasing the thing, you're going to have to start to work on the next project and start researching. So I do need you to go in and research some of the requirements, most likely with our security team, maybe some of the customer facing field teams and support teams, just to kind of understand like, hey, how do we address this issue so that not all employees have to access data from all of our customers?
Yeah, I can, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Okay. Let's check in maybe in our next one-on-one or something.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Okay. So round of applause for the mass manager dealing with difficult Holly. The intransigent employee. Okay, great job. Okay, so we're going to hear now from Darrell. I want to hear some of the things that you did really well, folks. Here we're going to praise first, obviously. So anybody here who's got positive compliments for the mass manager, you can stick them in the chat. We'll happily read them now or later. And then Darrell, tell us what your impressions. What did the mass manager do well?
Okay, so mass manager, I thought you did a really, really good job of explaining the importance of this project and why it was important. Okay, you did a great job of that. Anything else that people saw?
Yeah, there's a couple things here.
I'm seeing in the comment, very good verbal judo.
Good verbal judo.
And basically, you were very persistent. Okay, but you were persistent, and you had to be persistent because while you did a really good job of explaining why, you sounded really hesitant about could Holly work on this? Would she work on it next? You didn't give her any clear expectations about what you wanted done and when you wanted it done by, right? So if I were to rehash that, I would be saying something like, after having explained to Holly why this is really important, I would be saying to Holly, okay, you're working on this important project right now. When is that going to be finished by? It's going to be finished by then. When you finish that, I want you to take this on. This is what I want you to do. And this is what I want the outcome to be. And this is when it has to be done by, right? So I felt that you missed those two points.
Yeah. So folks, notice, I'm just sorry, Darrell, I'm going to interject here.
Go for it. Notice
the difference in the mass manager. Thank you for being our guinea pig, right? Like as you were describing it, you could almost feel that discomfort, that sort of backing away. And when Darrell's doing it, she's leading it, she's really direct. When's it going to be done? This is what has to happen next, right? And so already when Darrell does that, I'm going, oh, I'm going to get away with a lot less here, right? So notice the difference in one, language, but two, how that produces a difference in tone as well.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great, Holly. I'd like to ask the mass manager, what is your take on that? Or what do you think when I say that?
Yeah, no, I think everything you said really resonates. And this is something that I personally struggled with as I've managed teams in the past too. And I've definitely failed to delegate tasks in the past before. And I so wish I had actually attended this talk years before. But I think the part where I always struggled, I was always really good at giving the strategic context and the why behind something was important, valuable, but I kind of lacked that follow through around, okay, well, this is the commitment. I need you to really agree with this. And I need you to hold yourself accountable to this as well, not just for me to hold you accountable. So I definitely agree with all the feedback.
Yeah, mass manager, you come by that really honestly, because most of us, particularly when we first step into management roles, we feel really unsure about what we're doing, and we're unsure about whether it's actually okay. But it's actually our jobs to delegate and to delegate effectively, and to tell people really clearly what's expected of them And it's fair to people to tell them what's expected and when it's expected by, because as you said, then you actually you empower them and you give them the responsibilities to get on and do that. They've got a clear description.
And most of us don't get any training at this, right? Like there's an old stat that says like people don't get management training until 10 years after they've been a manager, right? And I would say anecdotally, at least, that's true with the people that I've worked with. And so we don't really get this done. And we're often in a situation, that first promotion, where we've been peers with folks and now we're promoted above them. And we're like, this is so awkward. I used to go for lunch with this person and now I have to come down and be the heavy and be like, get it done, right? And so we really struggle to make that happen. And so what happens then is we end up with expectations that are like Swiss cheese, right?
And I was also going to add in there, because you didn't set the clear expectation of what you wanted done and when you wanted done by, then it was difficult for you to actually get commitment because you hadn't given them that clear direction. And whereas if you've given them that clear direction, then you can actually say, okay, so can you get that done by? And is there anything standing in the way of you doing that? And then following through with okay, this is how and when I expect you to keep me updated on it, right? Kind of like when you fail with the first thing, with the not setting the clear, then all the other pieces don't fall into place because you haven't set up the first thing of when and what you want done and when you want it done by really clearly. But once you set that up clearly, then the rest is easy to build on that.
And I noticed something really interesting happened, Mass Manager, when you were delegating. So I noticed that towards the end you said, okay, we'll check in with this next week at our one-on-one, right? So you did that good job of creating like a check-in situation, which I love, right? But also that was kind of a way of you kicking this conversation down the road because we hadn't actually really defined yet what you wanted me to do. Like that was a question that I had asked you at one point. I said, well, what do you want me to do? You said, well, maybe this, maybe you talk to this person, maybe you start here. I noticed as just a keyword, there's a lot of maybe all strewn throughout this, which is again, another way of softening, right? And Mass Manager, if you listen to me do this, like I literally said to one of my employees this morning, I'm giving this talk with Darrell. If she was here right now, she'd murder me, right? So these things creep in to all of our speech from time to time. Darrell and I were practicing earlier and I started out the fixed one incorrectly, right? So this happens very easily. It happens, right? But those little words, those maybes, those those ers, that slight lean back really creates the impression that for me as the employee, I went, oh, I'm going to be able to get away with kicking this down the road. That was my vast impression leaving that, which is pretty common for most of us. Like who here in this room sees something they've done in delegation in what I did or what the Mass Manager just did, right? Lots of us. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so anybody else here have anything in the chat they want to add about something they noticed that the Mass Manager did well or something that they noticed that Mass Manager did that they do or could have done better? Curious to see anything else in the chat anyone's got to share. Janice says, just did this today. Yeah, me too, Janice. Literally me too, twice. And it's only 1 p.m., right? Good. Okay, well, folks, keen to hear more in the chat. And then we're going to give a big round of applause to the Mass Manager. Thank you so much. Yay. For coming and joining us and playing around and giving us some good errors to critique. Thank you, Mass Manager, because we know you can do this so much better than you've done it just now. But you've heard a couple of demos here from the Mass Manager, from me, from Darrell, about how this goes well, and some critiques and adjustments. So hopefully you're already on your way to having a few tips and tricks that you can apply starting maybe even this afternoon with your team as you're going to do some delegation.
Okay, so basically we've gone through a lot in the last hour to show you how to set expectations effectively with your team. So I'm just going to quickly recap those steps. Basically, it's what you want done and when you want it done by. Okay, and then you need to give an expectation as why, an explanation as to why you want this done. So your employee has some understanding and agency around this. And then you need to check in and make sure you get a firm commitment from your employee, making sure that there's nothing standing in the way or there's nothing they need from you, and then make sure you get that firm commitment. And require them to ask questions so that it relieves them of the sort of awkwardness about coming to you with questions. Let them know that it's perfectly okay and you expect them to come and ask questions. And then most importantly, requiring them to keep you updated and posted, and particularly if anything comes up that stands in their way, so that you can help them troubleshoot the problems to make sure that they meet the deadline.
If any of you want any more help with this, obviously, if you want to do some role playing like the Mass Manager did, both Darrell and I help people with this as part of our jobs. We're happy to help you with this as part of our jobs. So you can get a hold of us. I'll share some links in the chat, but for me, hollyburton.ca, for Darrell, darrellfarrow.com. And you can book a 30-minute call with us for free and have a chat through some of the issues that you're struggling with, and we're happy to help. So I'm gonna turn off the recording. Bye, folks listening to this on YouTube.